So we are at this moment in the semester where we finish the Buddhism unit and we are starting the cognitive science unit. And Rick is expert in both fields. And we are very happy to have him today here with us. And Rick.
Well, thank you. I'll jump in now. I feel very honored at the chance to be with you all. And so, my intention that I've talked about with Amelia is to present for maybe 10 minutes at the most, including something experiential, and then open it up for discussion. And in this 10-minute presentation, I'll take into account some of the questions that have already come in. I'll try to anticipate those and speak to them. And then we can open it up, regulated, I assume, by Amelia. I'll call her Amelia rather than Professor Barili. I'm Rick. So anyway, this is California. So let's start with the obvious question, which is, where do we begin when life falls apart? Where do we begin when we feel frustrated or stressed or disappointed, or our body hurts, we're sick, we've been mistreated by others? Where do we start when our heart is heavy, when we see injustice out there in the world that infuriates us? Where do we start? What do we do? And I have a little roadmap that I talk about that describes three major ways to practice, and it gives us a framework for answering this question. The first, most fundamental form of practice is to simply to be with what we're experiencing inside our own minds, while taking effective action as best we can out in the world and in the physical body, if it's relevant, to protest out in the world, or to wear a mask in the body, to take medicine, to exercise. But in particular, inside our own mind, the first step of all is simply to feel the feelings, to experience the experience, to be with what's there. Now, to be able to do that, we need to resource ourselves with mindfulness and self-compassion, acceptance, insight, and various psychological capabilities like being able to tolerate our distress or soothe ourselves or calm ourselves. And sometimes it's appropriate to be with our feelings only very briefly, because that's all we can stand in the moment, particularly with more intense traumatic material. For myself, I think about emptying the bucket of tears I acquired through my childhood, one spoonful at a time. So we be with what's there. And often that's all we need to do. We just be with it. The feelings flow. There's a shift in relationship to what we're experiencing. Maybe we have insight into what we're feeling. Maybe we're aware of the softer feelings of hurt or fear that might lie beneath anger. And in that process, that can feel complete. Often, though, we need not just to be with the mind, but to work with the mind. I think of the practice as like a bird with two wings, being with what's there and working with what's there. And working with the mind has two aspects, which takes us to the second of the three steps in the roadmap, which is to let go. So if the first step is to let be, the second step is to let go. We release tension from the body, we let feelings flow, we realize that certain thoughts or beliefs we've had are wrong or harmful or limited, or they made sense when we were 10 years old, they don't make sense today. We let go of them. And we let go of desires. We abandon unwholesome, unhelpful desires. We give up certain purposes or plans we may have had that are just not realistic or workable today. And then in the third step, we let in. We turn to the good that is also true. We turn to what is helpful that's also true alongside the bad, and we try to grow the good inside ourselves. That's my main focus. That's where I'm going to focus here with you today, on the third practice, letting in, growing the good, but it's in the context of the other two fundamental practices. Those three give you a kind of roadmap when you're upset about something, and they support each other to be able to let our feelings be. It's really helpful to have previously grown more resources inside ourselves so that we can actually tolerate our feelings and manage them skillfully. Uh, and as we develop our capacity to be with our experiences, we then become more skillful at both letting go and letting in. In effect, if the mind is like a garden, we can witness it, pull weeds, and plant flowers. All three are really important. And I talk about them in this metaphor in both hardwiring happiness and I think also in resilience. So this gives us a sense of what to do. Nothing in what I'm going to talk about growing the good is about positive thinking or looking at the world through rose-colored glasses or fake it till you make it. If anything, my focus on growing strengths inside is informed by a recognition of the crappiness of much of the world out there and many experiences we have, and why it's therefore important, especially for the people who are most mistreated and most unsupported by the world around them, why it's important as the essence of self-reliance to grow strengths inside, grow capabilities inside, like gratitude, self-worth, skills with other people, skills with your own mind. We grow these strengths to deal with what's bad more effectively, not to turn away from what's bad as what's called a kind of spiritual bypass. So is that kind of clear as a context? Then second, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to do a brief experiential practice with you that will also illustrate some of some of the methods I use that are grounded in brain science to deepen the trace, to deepen the impact, the lasting effect of beneficial experiences to grow these inner resources inside. So this is an experiential experiment in the laboratory of your own mind. You'll see what the results are yourself. There's no right result. There's just what happens, and we'll give it a whirl. It will involve 3 breaths. And after I teach this to you, you can always do this in just 3 breaths in a row, or you can take more than a single breath with each one of these 3 types of breath. And I'll do it with you. Want to try it? Okay, here we go. So the first breath is breathing while feeling your chest as a whole. Left and right together, front and back together. Breathing while feeling your chest as a whole. Take a few breaths in this way. In the second kind of breath, breathing while feeling caring, focusing on the feeling, keeping it simple. What's it like to be with someone you like or have compassion for? Perhaps love, maybe you respect. Breathing while feeling caring. You might put a hand on your heart or feel the breath in the area of the heart. We'll do this also for a few breaths. Breathing while feeling caring. Could be simply appreciating someone. And then in the third breath, which could be a little more challenging, breathing while feeling cared about. Keeping it simple. Other thoughts may arise, but returning to the feeling of what's it like to be with someone, maybe your dog, could be a friend, grandmother, could be a group of people, could be beings in the past, maybe someone who really loves you, wishes you well. Breathing while feeling cared about. And then for another minute or so, as we finish here, focusing on, in effect, meditating on the combined sense of calm and open heartedness. Calm and a warm heart. You can use different words. It could be a loving peacefulness, maybe a sense of calm strength with a warm heart. I'll be quiet while you focus on that experience. Getting a sense of this experience sinking into you, establishing yourself in a calm, open heartedness. Being aware of what feels good about this. Being aware, if you can, of one way that this combination of loving strength is relevant for you. It's personally meaningful. Okay, finishing up and knowing that you can continue to feel whatever's beneficial for you from this practice. Maybe a little calmer, a little more grounded, maybe intrigued by this combination of open-hearted peacefulness, what that might be like in your life and why it might be useful for you. And I'll note that you may recognize some of the neurologically, evidence-based methods for increasing your learning, your social emotional learning, somatic learning included from experiences. You might recognize some of what I've talked about there and some of my suggestions, notably staying with the experience, feeling it in your body, giving yourself over to it, letting this way of being become established in you, establishing yourself in it, and being aware of what feels good about it, and also what's personally relevant. These are different factors that steepen the growth curve. These are factors that increase the conversion in your brain from states to traits. And in this brief exercise here, this brief meditative practice, lasting just a few minutes really, you had an experience of what it's like to use these methods, which to me are wonderful because then you can use them anytime you want in your life. No one can control you. No one can defeat you from using these methods whenever you want to grow as much as possible from the experiences you're already having. Okay. So any comments or questions from here?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rick. I can see the elements of heal there. They have the experience, enrich it, absorb it. And then a question that was with the students sometimes was, and how do we do to link it to something
Great.
negative while at the same time not losing what we have just
Yeah,
experienced?
yeah. I could have done that as well. I wanted to be a little quick, but simply, and you can even do it right now in your own mind, because linking is natural. We do linking routinely. It's helpful though to get more conscious and deliberate about it as well as more skillful. So, for example, You could do it right now if you want.
Yeah.
Get a sense of, let's say, kind of feeling strong in yourself with a caring quality in it, like a warm hearted strength. You know, you're centered, you're grounded. You might even have a feeling of someone who is a model of that for you. But maybe a teacher, maybe someone like the Dalai Lama, uh, Michelle Obama, you know, just someone centered in their own strength with a warm heart. Okay. And then off to the side, you might have a little sense, maybe from times in your past when you have felt small and weak, pushed around, unable to stand up for yourself. And you're not trying to change it, you're just letting it be there while mainly focusing on the sense of warm hearted strength. So I'll be quiet so you can concentrate on this for half a minute. You're holding two things in awareness at once: calm strength in the front, maybe old feelings of weakness and worry off to the side. It could be simply that there are things these days you're worried about, like worry thoughts. So you could do this by really focusing on the feeling of warm hearted strength with worry thoughts sort of in the background. Yeah. It's like, okay, there are worry thoughts and I am strong. You know, I have a good heart. Okay. That's an example. Another one might be you're with someone, you feel good about being with them, you feel they respect you, they care about you. It's valid, it's genuine, it's real, and it's reassuring. And maybe over here, off to the side, are feelings of nobody likes me, or nobody liked me back then, or I'm not very worthy or adequate. That's kind of small and off to the side. Or maybe it's a really young part of you, how you felt in junior high school, you know, or third grade, something. And, or even really young, like, you know, how you felt when you were 2 years old and then your little brother came along and nobody paid attention to you anymore, something like that. So that's off to the side. But in the front could be the real experience in the present with someone who is nurturing and respectful of you, among many examples of doing linking. I suggest that if you've been traumatized, you don't try to do linking on the core of the trauma on your own, unless you're very, very clear you can do that without being hijacked by it. But many, many trauma therapies do linking of one in one form or another, but they do it with a very skillful therapist in a structured environment where everybody knows what they're doing. That would just be my one caution for you. Otherwise, generally, I really have the spirit as a psychologist and a longtime meditation practitioner and teacher, and also someone who first began practicing in the early 1970s in the Wild West of the human potential movement. And I just have a feeling a lot that as long as you're not hurting yourself, go for it. Try this stuff out, you know. Teachers and therapists know a lot of methods. Why not use them yourselves? So,
Mhm.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions, comments, other ideas?
I found it especially helpful when it was with the image of the person itself.
Yeah.
And the other, it's a little bit more difficult to do the transposition if thinking of somebody else, but the more closer the linkage, the better. But let's see what students are saying.
Yeah.
Let's go
Yeah.
into Barili.
How about you calling people? You'll know best, Amelia.
I like when they put the hands up, and I think
Okay,
Albert had his hand up. Yeah, Albert.
great.
Rick, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your presentation today and the video and the slides that you sent us. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I have several questions, but I'll ask one. Do you think that there has been in the United States a trend in parenting in the last few decades of overpraising young children? Is that is that is that possible to do?
Um, yeah, it's really hard to make comments on broad social trends because, of course, we're always struggling with is there an actual change in the general population that's kind of moving the bell curve, as it were, one direction or another, actually, or is it more like we're just changing our reporting or our identifying of what's happening? So, I don't really know. I think people have pointed out that. Um, there are certain risks in this partly goes to Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset. There's certain risks in saying to kids essentially, oh, everything you do is wonderful, because it can set up a standard for them that they always have to be wonderful. And also, it can undermine the whole notion of hard work over time and focusing on the process of getting better at things rather than feeling that you're entitled, in a way, privileged even, to be successful all the time. So there's things about that. On the other hand, boy, there's so much research that shows that uh, we are very we are socially dependent mammals, and we need social supplies like we need oxygen. Our mind needs social supplies like our body needs oxygen, and social supplies, especially when we're young, and but we still need them even when we're like old, like me. Uh, that experiences of friendliness, recognition, attunement, empathy, uh, respect, proportionate recognition of our accomplishments, prizing, cherishing, even love. We need these things. And there's a lot of research that shows that generally, when kids have a strong sense of a loving, cherishing, emotional availability on the part of their parents, they tend to do better. I think maybe I'll just summarize by saying I think the best odds strategy, I'm a parent too, and I've done a lot of work with kids. Best odds strategy, this draws on the work of Diana Baumrind at UC Berkeley, actually. The best odds strategy to raising, healthy, happy, thriving kids is a combination of, in terms of three dimensions: nurturance, aspiration, and authority. High nurturance, high aspiration, medium authority, right? And there are problems in situations where there's, a lot of love and no authority, or a lot of authority and no love. That's a problem. Okay, anyway, I'll just leave it there. Thank you, Albert.
I think
I see a couple more. Yeah,
Daniel has a question.
great.
I mean, Albert and Daniel are also from the course. Uh-huh. Go, Daniel.
Have a couple if we have the time for it, but uh, with I found your methods like really useful in my personal life, and I feel like there's this like battle between our brains getting hijacked by the stress we experience and this effort that we're making to be mindful. And I'm seeing through your methods and through other methods we're learning in this class how being mindful, being aware can help us create these buffers
Yeah,
against these stressors. But I'm just wondering what happens with people who are chronically exposed to
yeah,
stress. In my reporting, I interview a lot of undocumented people, a lot of incarcerated people, and it makes me wonder what happens to a person when they're chronically exposed to stress. Are they
yeah,
can these methods still be useful to them? How does it change?
yeah,
And then my second question is regarding like substances, particularly like after the fact, for people who do substances or have done substances. does that affect the effectiveness of these methods?
Yeah. Super questions. So there's no substitute for moral action in the world, right? There's just no substitute or skillful action. You know, the faucet is leaking, you can't sleep. There's no substitute for doing something about it. And as a society, as a community, as a country, there's no substitute for trying to, treat people well and improve their conditions. And sometimes inner work and outer work are presented as if they're opposed to each other. No, for me, they support each other. Both are necessary. It's true that some people specialize in one or the other. Like I specialize in inner work, but I respect outer work. I know people who are activists, they do outer work, but they also understand that inner work helps them sustain the good fight, the marathon of the good fight for many, many, many years. So to me, they're both true. In that context, clearly, the greater the challenges that a person is facing, including the challenge of being kicked in the teeth every day, the bigger the challenges, the more they need resources out in the world, in their physical body and in their mind. It's often hard to get more resources for people, from out in the world or even in their physical body, but in the mind, we can always grow strengths over time. And so for me, there's something very rugged and old school about what I'm saying and realistic that recognizes that life really sucks for a lot of people. And the more it sucks, yes, the better it would be for them if they built up more of these inner strengths over time inside. Not in any way to give up trying to help the world stop kicking them in the teeth. So I would say that. Now that the fact is, yes, and this goes to is the more vulnerable a person is. In other words, did the stresses begin when they were very young? Have stresses landed on someone who has been traumatized by other things? Do the stresses land on someone who maybe has some physical, just innate physiological sensitivities or vulnerabilities? Maybe they're more open just to life experiences, which maybe could make them more artistic and creative and passionate and beautiful, but also it means they're more sensitive, understandably, to being mistreated, including by other people, etc. So the bigger this, it is true that the worse the stresses are, the more they really can affect people. And you probably know the work on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If you don't, it's a really useful thing to know about. And the current Surgeon General of California, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, is a pediatrician who has really specialized in this. So the point is, early childhood experiences can really, really affect people. All that's really true. And what it means to me as a practical person is, okay, it's true. Now let's get to work. And then let's do the best we can each day to, improve what's outside them, improve what's in their body, and in my work, especially improve what's in their mind. And I'm very hopeful about the potential of building strengths inside the mind because it's always available to you to grow something good there. Every day, you can grow something good there. You can learn a little thing about treating other people. You can learn a little thing about yourself. You can you can feel your own toughness, your own grit and endurance, and you can have respect for yourself. You can grow respect for yourself every day. You can feel a little more connected to other people. You can recognize and feel your own good heart a little bit more every day. We can grow strengths every day. That's fantastic, right? And very hopeful. And just that fact, I think, can be very hopeful for people who are stuck in really bad situations, including incarcerated. It's like, you got my body, but you don't get my mind. And in my mind, I'm free. And there are people I know who are currently incarcerated who teach in this way, or who I know that are no longer incarcerated but were, and work with people who are incarcerated. So I'd say that. And then the last thing, substances, if I'm following you correctly, all kinds of things change the brain, both our experiences, mental experiences change the brain, substances change the brain. And I think the question for me is, can someone's brain be so damaged by cocaine or LSD or marijuana or alcohol, let's say, can it be so damaged that they first are incapable of having certain kinds of beneficial, positive experiences? And second, if they are having those beneficial experiences, has their brain been so damaged that they cannot learn from them, that there cannot be a change, right? And I do not think that, generally speaking, substances are going to make people incapable of experiencing important beneficial experiences or learning from them. It is true that certain substances like cocaine can permanently alter the brain and in a way that makes it harder to feel enjoyment from mildly pleasurable experiences. And on the other hand, I'm very interested in the possibility that someone who's had that background can actually train their brain to recognize the simple pleasure in a chocolate chip cookie, or the simple pleasure of petting their cat, or just sort of hanging out with their friend without getting loaded. And with mindfulness training to gradually intensify, and my techniques as well, to intensify the lusciousness of just sitting here with my friend playing Call of Duty or something, just hanging out, right? It's good enough. So I'm hopeful of that. So my short answer, I think, is there as well, we are not defeated. There is a bit of a important exception around depression. And certain drug experiences, I think, can leave a kind of like chronic amphetamine use can leave people kind of clinically depressed. And when we're depressed, it's hard to learn from beneficial experiences. They don't tend to sink in. And sometimes people call depression a learning disorder, not in the technical sense, like you would think of a kid who's struggling to read, but rather that people who are mildly to moderately depressed are often having positive experiences, but they don't sink in. It's like water through a sieve. And that's where doing things to lift the depression, either mental or behavioral techniques, like being active, practicing gratitude, focusing on pleasures, etc., or taking Zoloft or 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin. That's a natural substance. You can get it. I have the hiccups now. You can get it at a health food store. That can then enable the brain to become more receptive to learning from and internalizing and feeding themselves really with the nutrients, the emotional nutrients, the psychological nutrients of beneficial experiences. The bottom line for me is I'm never going to bet against the human heart. And the bigger the challenge, the more work we have to do. But there's dignity in doing that work. And you can trust that you will earn the results of your work too. And I think what I'm saying comes true from my life, which has been pretty fortunate, even privileged. And I've seen it in my life, and I've seen it in the lives of others who've had a much harder life. And I've seen it in the stories and the reports of people who've had horribly hard lives, and yet who began to work on themselves internally, and bit by bit by bit began to grow these kind of muscles, inside their innermost being.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. I love the quote from Milarepa that you often talked about, that in the beginning, nothing sticks. In the middle, nothing stays. And at the end, nothing goes, nothing is lost. And it's a reminder, you were talking about more extreme cases, and I'm giving you some time so that you can breathe and take water.
It's good. I love this. This is great. Let's take another question. It's great.
There was a hand, but let me see, just so that it's a reminder for us too that we need to persist, right?
Yeah, that's right.
results, whether there is an extreme case or not. And there was a hand from Julia. She was waiting to ask you if that's okay with you.
Yeah, please. And then maybe we'll finish here. But yeah, thank you, Julia.
Thank you. I didn't want to hold you up, but
Oh, no.
this has been amazingly wonderful. Um, I'm going back to your trilogy of be, let go, and allow in. And the allow in kind of sent up a red flag for me, simply because some folks have, some of us, I'll speak personally, have a thinner membrane, so to speak.
Yeah.
And for myself, allowing in has necessarily needed a kind of filter on it, because just allowing in everything is not wise. So what kind of filtration is wise to, in wanting to be open-hearted, and recognizing that you want to take in, but not taking in all the crap along with it.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So thank you for that. Yeah. So to be clear, what I'm focusing on, I'm working backwards. I'm saying, life is full of opportunity. It's also full of challenges. And without a doubt, there is suffering. It's not the whole of life. That's not what the Buddha taught, but he certainly pointed out part of the human condition certainly is suffering. What are we going to do about it? So I work backwards from that to say that a major thing we can do about it is to release over time. I'll just say it differently. A major thing we can do about it is to be with our experience as it is without fighting it. That alone is a helpful way to deal with the hard things in life. And it's important to be able to, as you were getting at, to be able to resource ourselves so we can titrate, we can dilute, we can filter our experiences so they're not overwhelming to us. I think of the Goldilocks as the great Dharma story of all time. It's all about the middle way of the just right spot, right? Not too hot, not too cold. So we're being with our experience enough that it's authentic, but not so overwhelming that we're flooded and we start to drown in it. And that's where mindfulness training, which gives us some disidentification, some detachment from the movie that's playing on the screen. We're letting the full movie play, but we're witnessing it from 20 rows back. So that enables us to be able to be with our experiences. Second, to deal with the challenges of life, it's definitely useful to release old neurotic habits, to release stuff we learned when we were kids that were necessary to survive our childhood, maybe, but today are like, it's like walking around in a suit of armor that's 3 sizes too small. We let go. Like, I'm married. I've been married now 39 years, and my wife will do something or say something, and a reaction will arise. Be like, why'd she criticize me for how I did the dishes or something? And I don't need that reaction. It's old. It doesn't matter. I know she's not trying to criticize me. It doesn't matter. Even if she is, who cares? Blah, blah. So there's a place for releasing things. We let stuff go. We let go of desires. My grandfather was an alcoholic. I can recognize the part of my brain that wants that molecule, and to let go of that. To let go of vengeful fantasies. Politically, I think the longing for justice can become a craving for vengeance. And that tipping point is useful to pay attention to, for example, right? So now then we come to the letting in part. And when I'm speaking of letting in, I'm talking about first already having some kind of experience that's beneficial. So already you're feeling or thinking or sensing something useful. Your body is calming. That's useful. You feel strong. That's useful. You feel determined. That's useful. You have a sense of healthy entitlement, that you have the right to good treatment from other people, and that them taking advantage of you, like, is unfair. That's useful, right? Uh, Finally getting to the bathroom after a long drive, relief, that's useful, right? Whatever it might be, subtle spiritual insights, that's useful. Realizing, as I did in my 20s, that growing up I had been a nerd but not a wimp, that's useful. Whatever it might be. So that's where I'm starting, Julie. I'm thinking about, we're starting with an experience that you already regard as beneficial. It's useful or enjoyable or both. It's wholesome. It's a good one. And then the question becomes, are we learning from that experience or not? Is it neat in the moment as it washes through us like water through a sieve? Or are we gaining from that experience in terms of lasting learning, especially emotional, social, somatic, motivational learning? That's the key question for me. As we face the challenges of life, are we not just feeling something good in the moment, but are we growing from it as a result? Are we learning from it as a result? Are we building structure, good structure inside ourselves? Are we building, as Daniel said, buffers inside ourselves? Are we building strengths? Are we taking in psychological food that the little boy or girl or beyond gender has longed for inside and lacked, didn't get? And now we can feed that younger part of ourselves, right? To me, that's the key. And so I wanted to frame it that way. It's not just dropping all filters and allowing the world to bombard you like with a fire hose. It's about selectively. For me, this boils down to a handful of times every day, slowing it down for a breath or two to let it sink in the flow. And maybe also knowing one or two things in particular you're focused on developing inside yourself these days. It might be a kind of meditative thing you're sort of working on. It could be something very specific, like disengaging from stupid quarrels with other people faster, or it might be something like getting your ex out of your head. or your stepdad out of your head, whatever it might be. And so then you look for a chance to experience that particular thing you're trying to grow inside yourself, that particular muscle you're trying to build these days. And then when you have a chance to experience it, slow it down for a breath or longer to take it in. So, but what I'm talking about is pretty this simple. Now, coming to specifically, it's really helpful with regard to this second thing of what are you trying to grow these days? If someone, let's say you, is by nature really has porous filters, is pretty wide open to external as well as internal stimuli, stuff bubbling up as well as bombarding in, what resource, what psychological capabilities of various kinds would be really helpful for this challenge? Let's say. You see what I'm doing? I'm connecting a resource, I'm matching it. This is the idea of the vitamin C that is matched to the particular issue. And if a particular issue is something like someone who is in many beautiful ways, very sensitive and open and takes on the feelings of others, maybe, compassion is like, oh, you really take it on board. Or if they're angry or something, it really lands inside you. There's an old saying, fences make for good neighbors. And I talk about this in the book Resilient. Autonomy supports intimacy. When we feel flooded by other people, that in effect is a loss of autonomy, which makes it harder to maintain intimacy. Think about that. So what might be a resource, and then I'll move to a finish here. Several things. And by the way, this speaks to the great theme in the world's wisdom traditions, including Buddhism, of the balance of compassion and equanimity? How do we open our heart fully to the sorrows of the world without being so overwhelmed that we're no longer able to help the world, right? Or we just pay a huge price unnecessarily ourselves? How do we bring together compassion and equanimity, a kind of even keeledness amidst the waves of life? So several suggestions grounded in brain science. One is to increase what's called interoception, the internal sense of the body. One way to do that is be mindful of breathing, feeling your chest as a whole. Because that process of feeling your chest as a whole will naturally bring you into interoception, naturally draw you into the internal sensations of the body. And as you turn up the volume on those internal sensations in the body, it will turn down the volume of the other people coming at you. And it will keep also affirming, this is the second suggestion, when you do engage in interoception, notice you're basically all right now, in the present. Focusing on in the present, the heart is beating, there's enough air to breathe, still okay in the present. Anxiety is about the future. In the present, I'm okay. And that, so we have a combination of things, interoception and reassurance from the inside out that's undeniable. I'm still here. It's not perfect. There's some pain in my back. I'm hungry. I'm still waiting for that bathroom or something. I wish I had a cookie. I don't know. It's not perfect, but we're basically okay. The little soft furry animal of the body, Mary Oliver's line, the soft animal of the body, is still basically okay. And so that's the second thing. And a third method, one I routinely use, is to imagine boundaries or barriers between you and other people. They're different these are methods other people do too, like little tricks, like imagining you're looking at that really loud person through the wrong end of a telescope and they're very far away. Or you're imagining a wall of glass, even a foot thick glass, like in a submarine, between you and the other person. Or you keep reminding yourself, they're over there, I'm over here. You could imagine being like a deeply rooted tree and they're just blowing wind through your leaves. And yeah, you're losing a few leaves maybe, it's a little shaky, but they're just the wind. And after the wind stops blowing, kawoosh, still here. You could even add a little attitude. I'm not going to swear in this teaching here, but still here, still here. Something, I'm still here. Okay, good. These are all good things that I think can really help as building up traits inside oneself over time. The trait of ongoing in touchness with the body, the trait of ongoing reassurance, basically still all right now in the present, when it's true. Sometimes it may not be true. It's always about genuine. It's got to be authentic always. But usually for most people, it's genuinely true most of the time that we're basically all right in the present. And also building up the strength of differentiation, the knowledge and the feeling of differentiation. They're over there, I'm over here. And as I say to myself sometimes, I can be with you without agreeing with you. I'm not implicated in your mind stream. And actually, ironically, often the more compassion we can mobilize for other people, the more we feel differentiated and centered in ourselves. And, okay. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, Julia. It gave me a chance to kind of rattle on a bit here. Thank you. All right. I should pull it. I should let you go, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. You have answered many of the things that the students had also asked, about like they are right now doing an experiment trying to, within the course of Borges Buddhism and Cognitive Science, with working with something that they are trying to change. And many of the things you are talking about, I think, are very good tips and hints and reassurance for all the work they are doing right now on observing and planting new seeds and taking the weeds from the gardens. Thank you so much. I mean, we can't thank enough, but I'm going to do something. I'm going to put them again in a gallery, and everyone can unmute yourself. And
Oh, thank you all. I'm reading your chats. They're extremely sweet.
Thank
Really
you.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah,
Thank
go
you,
get
Rick.
them. Can I finish by telling you a little story
Of
really
course,
fast?
Sure.
All right.
of course.
That'd be great. So thank you. By the way, this is great. I would, as I told Amelia, I wanted to keep this at half an hour, but of course I immediately fell in love. So let's get going. Yeah. Well, okay. So quick story here is that I was in a little workshop with a teacher named Joseph Goldstein,
Oh, yeah.
and Amelia recognizes his name. You may too. Joseph is a longtime mindfulness teacher, an American who went to Thailand and did deep meditation when he was a young man in the 1960s or 70s, came back to America. He's from the East Coast. And Joseph is he's kind, but he's very dignified and kind of stiff and, and old school. He doesn't, give out compliments easily or anything like that. And so anyway, I was in a little workshop with him about relaxing the sense of self, not taking life so personally. And I had an experience, and I went up to him and I asked him, is this what you're talking about? And that's, by the way, an important thing, to feel confirmed in our practice, where we are on the trail, on the path. And to appreciate that we actually we have made some progress. It's okay to want to get that affirmed. Even if there's a little ego involved, and there was for me, certainly, it's still okay to be confirmed by a coach. Yeah, you did that right. Now let's, what's the next thing? So I went up to Joseph, who was kind of scary, and I said, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Is that what you're talking about? He said, yes, that's good, which was good. And then he smiled and said two words I've never forgotten. They seem absolutely central to the process. He smiled and then he said, keep going. Keep going. You may have read me tell this story, but it's a good story. So that's the essence of the process, right?
Exactly.
Wherever we are, wherever we start, every day is a new beginning. Keep going. Don't give up. Kind of with Daniel, kind of a point here for me is it's about sustained effort over time.
Right.
A lot of people will sustain effort over time over things they know and would even say are not actually that valuable, right? Like something at work or something or other, but they don't sustain effort over time related to what matters most, their innermost being, and becoming more skillful and competent and capable and wise and loving and moral and happy and awakened in this life. Your one wild and precious life, also as Mary Oliver puts it. I'm going to need some good quotes from Borges. I can see that going forward. You can help me with that, Amelia.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
Thank
it's sustained effort every day. And what kind of efforts will we make? We make the ones that have heart. We'll make the efforts that are juicy and rewarding and work, and that we connect to personally. Those are, so that's where we can emphasize and focus our practice. But when we do identify those sorts of things, it's old school. It's up to us to make those efforts. And a lot of people won't. But if you do over time, sky's the limit.
Right.
Cowabunga.
Up when you think that you have a plateau, or when you
Yep.
sometimes feel you lost it, but it's part of it, right? It's just
Yeah.
you know that it can happen, and so keep going, like you say. It's
Yeah, that's right.
beautiful.
That's right. Well, you all, super pleasure. Take good care.
Thank you.
Happy heart to you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And you have a great professor.
Ah.
Yes, we do.
Okay, y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, Rick. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.